And get a little bit of context here now with Philip Turle. I mean, Philip, for some of our listeners, maybe viewers, when they're hearing that, it all sounds a bit like inside baseball. Just break it down, if you will, for us. Let's roll back to summer of last year when Macron first called these snap elections that basically got us in the situation we're in now.
Well, Emmanuel Macron's been president since 2017, and he's had, as we were hearing before, 7 prime ministers. This is the shortest reigning Prime Minister, Sebastien Lecornu, but some of the previous ones have also been pretty short. And the reason for that is that during the first term in office, 5 years, from 2017 to 2022, things were going fairly okay for Emmanuel Macron. He had a majority in Parliament, could pass the policies that he wanted to get through. But when he was re-elected in 2022, he wasn't given a majority in Parliament to be able to push through more reforms that he had planned. And that has led to him calling snap elections last year after the far-right National Rally did very well in the European elections, thinking that with that he could win back a substantial majority in the National Assembly and push through these reforms that he wanted to push through, notably to try to reboot the French economy, because there's a 3.3 trillion euro debt that France has right now, which is absolutely colossal and is preventing the country from reorganising its public services, basically. So that was his aim, but it all fell flat, and he didn't manage to obtain a new majority and had an even smaller majority, relative majority, in the National Assembly. Now, the problem here, Jeannie, is that although Emmanuel Macron is still president, the other parties can smell blood. They know that he's in a weak position. Just look at the opinion polls over the last few hours. Sebastien Lecornu, the outgoing Prime Minister, he has only 17% of favourable opinions in France.
17,
that's according to 17. That's according to YouGov. Emmanuel Macron, it's even worse. According to this YouGov poll, he only has 16% of French people who think he's doing a good job. That is why you have the far right of Marine Le Pen, the far left of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and even now in the centre you have parties calling for Emmanuel Macron, in some cases, to hold fresh snap elections so that they can try to improve their majority in the National Assembly with a view to being in power, and other parties, notably the far right and the far left, who are saying that Emmanuel Macron should resign, stand down, and there should be a fresh presidential election, because that would give them the chance to become president of France. So that is the situation right now, and the resignation of Sebastien Lecornu is something that we've never seen in the history of the Fifth Republic in France, the Fifth Republic which was created by General de Gaulle back in 1958, and which is a presidential regime. It's the president who names the prime minister. And Emmanuel Macron can try to name prime ministers, but if they can't get policies through, they can't manage to create a government, which is what Sebastien Lecornu has been trying to do with bringing in members of other parties, then they're not going to be able to push through any policies, and it will all fall flat. And that's why Sebastien Lecornu has basically resigned this morning.
The Fifth Republic, of course, makes the French presidency one of the most powerful presidencies in the world. As you were saying, we've got the France Unbowed, the far left, who's going to be giving a press conference shortly that will be carrying who wants him to resign. The far right, led by Marine Le Pen, among others, also wanting Macron to resign. What's the likelihood that the president might actually step down before his term ends in 2027?
Well, Emmanuel Macron's made it pretty clear right the way down the line that he has no intention of resigning before his term is up in 2027. What could happen? There are 2 possibilities. The first one is, of course, he will call fresh snap elections. I don't think he really wants to do that, because he knows that it's going to be even worse for him afterwards. There is a strong possibility that the far-right National Rally, which is leading high in the opinion polls right now in France, would win a majority in Parliament, and then he would have to govern with a prime minister from the far-right, possibly Jordan Bardella, the president of the National Rally at the moment. The problem for Marine Le Pen here is that she is banned from running for office. If there were a snap election in France tomorrow, she would not be able to run, and therefore Jordan Bardella, her deputy, would have to take her place in the party, and he would then become prime minister if he were nominated to that post by Emmanuel Macron. On the other side, there are those calling for Emmanuel Macron to be the destitution of the French president. That is a very difficult thing to do here in France, because basically the president can only be thrown out of office if he has committed a crime which does not go in line with his role as president. If he's caught, for example, embezzling money out of the country's coffers, or if he's making decisions behind the back of his government, or whatever. He hasn't done any of those things. But there are those in Parliament saying, well, we need to kick Emmanuel Macron out, and then we can bring in a new president and force him to call early presidential elections. You need 385 MPs, a two-thirds majority in Parliament, for that to happen. For the moment, that figure is far from being assured. If the far left, for example, called for the destitution of Emmanuel Macron, it is pretty unsure that 385 MPs would vote in favour of that. So that looks like a long shot. I think what we're looking at here is two possibilities. Either A, Emmanuel Macron tries to name another candidate to be prime minister, but it could go around in circles and will be face-to-face with the same situation, or he could call snap elections, legislative elections, and then see how those turn out, and then name a new prime minister and try to cling on to power for another couple of years. And final possibility for Emmanuel Macron is that he decides that he's had enough and he stands down and says, I'm standing down of my own free will. We're going to have anticipated early presidential elections, and we'll see what happens after that. Those are really the three case scenarios at the moment here in France.
Now, as you were saying at the beginning of all of this is, of course, on the context of France's economy, France's spiraling debt. How bad are things for France at the moment when it comes to the debt, and what's going to be happening while we're still in this limbo period?
Well, the debt has gone spiraling upwards. 114% of GDP, 7% of state spending is just paying off the interest of the debt. None of that money is invested into the economy. So there are cuts being made to public services and a lot of concern that France could be finding itself being hauled over by the International Monetary Fund, and that is something that the French government certainly does not want, and certainly Emmanuel Macron doesn't want it either. And it will lose its credibility rating, or its credit rating. So there is concern about that. Now, why has France got such a high debt? Because it has a very efficient social security system in this country, and also a large number of the large amount of the debt came during the COVID crisis, when the French government decided to bail out companies to keep them going, to keep them buoyant during COVID when they couldn't work and people couldn't come to work. They still received their salaries, which was paid by the state, and that pushed the debt upwards. And there's also been, of course, the impact of the war in Ukraine and other events that have happened independently of France that have hit the French economy. So all of these have contributed to France having this colossal debt right now, which is one of the worst in the European Union. And there have been many proposals by different political parties on how to get rid of that debt. But the bottom line here is that no one is in agreement about what the best path to follow is to help France recover some of that money. Some say that the retirement age should be increased. Others say it should be lowered. Some say there should be taxes on those who earn more than 100 million euros a year. This is a Zuckman tax of 2%. Other parties say, no, you can't do that because that will push investors out of France to other countries. So there's no real agreement on what path should be taken, and that is one of the big challenges facing Emmanuel Macron in his final 2 years in office, if he manages to hold on that long.
Philippe, you've lived in France a long time. You've covered French politics a long time. I mean, where do we go from here? It really seems like this is an incredible impasse for this country.
Well, in all the years that I've been commenting on French politics, which is a long time, I have never seen anything quite like this. Prime ministers tend to come and go. There have been many, as we were saying, 7 since 2017, which is, I think, in that amount of time, the most that we've ever seen. And certainly this is the shortest period of a prime minister. To such an extent that we didn't even get the nomination of his new government until yesterday. We haven't even had his proposal of his general policy or general policy statement, which was due to be given tomorrow. He's resigned ahead of that, which pushes everything back to square zero. And the bottom line is that France still doesn't have a budget, and that budget has to be voted and finalised by the end of this year. So there is a lot of urgency for the country to find a way out of this. And one of the big problems now is that there is so much apathy amongst the French population, fatigue about politics, people with this notion that all politicians are crooks and all politicians don't care less about the population. It's making it harder and harder for political parties to galvanize support amongst the French people to try to win an election, because there is this general feeling that, well, even if we do vote for them, it's not going to do any good because we'll be face to face with another situation where the government will collapse and we won't have any way forward. And I think that is probably one of the major challenges facing Emmanuel Macron right now.
You were talking earlier about the numbers in the polls and how low the centrist Emmanuel Macron is at the moment in the polls, how low the prime minister for a month, Sebastien Lecornu, was as well, but how high the far-right party has been. Tell us a bit more about this rise of the far-right in France. What are French people hoping to get from the far-right?
There's a couple of elements I think that are important here. The far right goes back to 1972. It was created by Jean-Marie Le Pen, who is a household name here in France and pretty much everywhere else around Europe and in the world. And he created the National Front, which was a party which had anti-Semitic roots and was racist and basically anti-Algerian. He then handed it over to his daughter, Marine Le Pen, in 2012. She's completely cleaned the party up since then. She wanted to make it a more suitable party to be elected. She even changed the name from the National Front to the National Rally to try to forget the past that her father had been linked with. And she's now moved from being anti-Semitic to anti-Islam and anti-immigration, which has always been the underlining factor of the far right in France. This is a party that is populist, always comes up with simple solutions to difficult problems, and they've never been running the country. They never had a prime minister that has been nominated by the National Rally. There are quite a lot of MPs in the National Assembly. It has the largest group of MPs from any one party in the National Assembly right now, with 142 seats. But that's not enough to be able to govern, because you need 279 seats to be able to be totally in control of the National Assembly. So that is the situation as far as the National Rally is concerned right now. They have MPs elected around the country, particularly in the south of France, particularly in the north of France, which is where Marine Le Pen has her headquarters, in Hénin-Beaumont. But she, as I was saying earlier, is facing the fact that she cannot run for office. She's been disqualified for embezzling funds from the European Union, found guilty of that, and disqualified from running for office for 5 years, which would automatically stop her from running for president of France in the next presidential election in 2027. She's appealed against that ruling. There's due to be an appeal hearing in the new year. That ban, if it's successful, this appeal hearing for her, would be lifted, but she doesn't know whether that's going to be the case or not. So for the moment, she can't run for office. So if there were legislative elections in France tomorrow, Marine Le Pen could not run to be re-elected to the National Assembly. She would just be a figure, if you like, on the outside of the National Assembly, but a figurehead within the National Rally. But she can't run then again for president in 2027, which leaves the door open to her deputy, who is Jordan Bardella, who's this 30-year-old, much younger member of the National Rally, who is quite popular in France, and he's seen as someone who could possibly be a candidate for prime minister and even for president of France in the next elections. This is something that is not particularly pleasing for Marine Le Pen, because she's already run 3 times for president of France and been beaten. She's got her eyes on 2027, saying this could be the time that I'm going to be elected. She doesn't want to let Jordan Bardella, her deputy, who's only 30, take that away from her when she thinks that she might at last have enough popular support to become president of France in the next election.